Welcome, dear viewers, to a toastily terrifying experience. In this video, we're diving into the dark, crusty corners of your kitchen with tales that will make you think twice before you butter your bread. Get ready for a spine-chilling collection of stories where every slice could be your last, and where the bread bin holds more than just crumbs. So grab your courage, because these toasted tales are about to loaf you breathless. A few years ago, I decided to change my morning routine before work, but I ended up in a bizarre situation. I was tired of the same old coffee and toast, so I thought I'd try spicing things up by experimenting with different types of bread. Little did I know, this simple change would lead me down a path of eerie adventure. I started with a loaf of artisanal sourdough, the kind with a crust so hard you could knock on it like a door. I toasted it to perfection, or so I thought. As I spread the butter, the toast seemed to watch me with its tiny, pockmarked holes. "Just your imagination," I muttered to myself, but then the toast began to expand. The slice grew before my eyes, not just in size but in dimension, creating a portal right there on my kitchen counter. The burnt edges glowed with an otherworldly light, and a whisper of wind carried the scent of forgotten bakeries. Curiosity, mixed with a dash of morning madness, propelled me forward. I reached out, touching the warm, crusty surface, and was immediately sucked into the toast. I landed in a world where everything was made of bread. The ground was a sea of crumbs, the trees were towering baguettes, and the sky was a swirling mass of doughy clouds. The air was thick with the smell of yeast and danger. I walked, or rather crunched, my way through this bizarre landscape, each step echoing with the sound of breaking bread. I soon encountered creatures of this bread-made realm, sentient slices of rye that whispered secrets of the oven, croissants that fluttered like birds overhead. There was also a menacing figure of burnt toast that seemed to follow me. This dark toast, charred to the point of being almost black, had eyes of melted butter and a mouth that hissed steam. It soon became clear to me that I needed to find my way back, but how? I ventured deeper, driven by the need to escape and a newfound sense of adventure. I met a guide, a wise old Shibata, who told me of the Bread King, keeper of the portal back to the world. The journey to his castle was fraught with peril, rivers of melted butter to ford, forests of moldy bread to navigate, and the constant threat of the burnt one. The castle was like any other, made of perfectly toasted slices, golden and crisp. Inside, I met the Bread King, a figure with a crown of pretzel knots and a robe of woven challah. He explained the rules of this realm. Only those who could master the art of toasting could return home. He gave me one last slice of bread, an ancient, untouched white loaf, and a challenge, toasted to perfection, or remain in breadland forever. With no toaster in sight, I had to improvise. I built a makeshift oven from the ruins of old breadsticks, using the sun, which in this world was a massive, glowing ball of dough. I toasted the bread, watching it closely, fearing the burnt one's fate. The toast came out golden, with just the right crunch, and the aroma was divine. The Bread King nodded in approval, and with a wave of his hand, the portal reappeared. As I stepped through, I felt a crunch underfoot turn to the familiar linoleum of my kitchen. The toast portal vanished, leaving behind only the slice I had toasted, now just regular bread. I looked at my watch. Only minutes had passed in my world, but it felt like a lifetime in breadland. From that day on, I never took my morning toast for granted. Each slice was a reminder of my adventure, a tale I could never share without sounding mad. But every now and then, when I toast my bread, I swear I can hear the distant crunch of an adventure waiting just beyond the crust. A few months back, I had to go shopping for a new toaster. My old one had finally given up the ghost after a decade of service, leaving me with unevenly toasted bread every morning. I headed to the local electronics store, one of those places where the lights are too bright and the air smells faintly of static. Inside, I found a sleek modern model with a digital display and settings for every conceivable type of bread. It was a bit more than I wanted to spend, but the promise of perfect toast every morning was too tempting. So I brought it home, setting it up on my counter where the old one used to sit. The first use was uneventful enough. The toast came out just right, crisp on the outside, soft inside. But as days passed, something strange began to happen. Each morning, when I pushed down the lever to toast my bread, I'd hear a faint whisper, like someone murmuring right into my ear. "Perfect, every time," it would say, barely audible over the hum of the machine. At first I laughed it off, chalking it up to the early morning grogginess or perhaps the toaster's own mechanical quirks. But then the whispers grew clearer and more insistent. Perfect, every time, or else. One morning I decided to test it, toasting a slice just a bit too long. The toast came out charred, and the room filled with a chilling silence. There was no whisper this time, but the air felt heavier, like a storm was brewing inside my kitchen. That night, I dreamt of dark, burnt hands reaching out from the toaster, pulling me into its dark, metallic depths. The next day, I was meticulous, ensuring the toast was perfect. But the toaster had other plans. It ejected the bread too soon, leaving it pale and underdone. As I reached in to retrieve it, something felt off. The bread was cold, colder than it should have been, and when I touched it, a shiver ran down my spine. Over the next few days, the toaster seemed to have a mind of its own. Sometimes the toast would be perfect, but then, without warning, it would either burn or remain raw. Each time I failed to meet its mysterious standards, the whispers grew louder and more threatening. Perfect, every time, or else. This is when I started to notice other signs. The digital display would flicker with strange symbols, like a language I couldn't understand. The room would grow colder around the toaster, as if it was drawing in all the warmth. One morning, I found the bread I had left out overnight, sliced and neatly arranged on the counter, as if inviting me to try again. Desperate, I decided to research the model online, finding nothing but glowing reviews from users who claimed it was life-changing. But then, in the depths of an obscure forum, I found a thread titled, "The Toaster's Curse." Users described similar experiences, whispers, cold bread, and symbols. One user had even claimed their toaster had started to change shape, becoming more like a mouth, ready to devour. I knew I had to end this, but how? I unplugged it, thinking to return it, but when I touched the plug, a shock ran through me, not just painful, but laced with a whisper, "You can't escape perfection." The next morning, I decided to confront it. I placed a slice of bread, and with a deep breath, I pressed down the lever. The whisper was immediate, perfect, every time, or else. I stood my ground, watching the timer, adjusting it manually. The toast popped up, perfect, but the relief was short-lived. The room darkened, the air turned icy. The toaster's slots seemed to widen, the metal warping into a gaping, hungry maw. From within, a voice, no longer a whisper but a clear, menacing threat, spoke to me. "You think you're safe now?" In a panic, I grabbed the toaster, intending to throw it away, but it clung to the counter, almost as if it had fused with it. With a surge of adrenaline, I managed to yank it free, the sound of tearing metal echoing through the kitchen. I ran outside, tossing it into the dumpster, hearing a scream of distorted electronic noise as it vanished under the trash. Back inside, my kitchen was normal again, the oppressive atmosphere gone. But a chill lingered, a reminder. I never bought another toaster. Instead, I now toast my bread over an open flame, watching it carefully, always wary of perfection. Because now, every morning, I listen for whispers in the silence, knowing that some things, once given power, never truly leave. Back in college, my dorm mate Kyle and I experimented a bit with food preparation, though that might not be the best term. Basically, we were both lazy and wanted to do as little work as possible. Our go-to meal was toast. You could say we practically lived on it. But one day, our simple, mundane routine took a turn into something far beyond our wildest and darkest dreams. We had this ancient battered toaster that we'd salvaged from a yard sale. It was one of those from the 70s with fake wood paneling, the kind where you could never tell if your toast was going to come out golden or burnt to a crisp. One fateful night, after a particularly late study session fueled by energy drinks and the promise of toast, we decided to give our old toaster one last chance. Kyle, ever the adventurous one, decided to toast a piece of bread that had been in our fridge a bit too long. It was hard, almost rock-like, but we were out of fresh bread. The toaster whirred to life, its usual mechanical hum sounding more like a growl. The bread went in, and we waited, expecting the usual chaos. Instead, the kitchen lights flickered, and a strange, electric scent filled the room. The toast popped up, but it wasn't just toast. It was glowing, with an eerie blue light emanating from its charred edges. Kyle, always the braver of us, reached out to touch it. The moment his finger made contact, the toast shattered into 1,000 glowing crumbs, and from the toaster, a voice whispered, "You've awakened me." At first we thought we were hallucinating from sleep deprivation, but then the voice grew louder and more commanding. "I am the toaster of ages, bound to this world until I find an offering worthy of my power." The toaster began to shake, the wood paneling cracking, revealing a core that pulsed like a heart. This is where panic set in. We tried to unplug it, but the cord seemed to squirm away from our grasp. The lights in our dorm flickered more violently, the room growing colder as the toaster's presence seemed to suck in all the warmth. The voice continued, "Each day you must offer me bread, but not just any bread. It must be perfect, or you'll suffer the consequences." For weeks we tried to appease this entity. We scoured bakeries for the finest bread, but no matter how perfect the slice, the toaster was never satisfied. Our dorm room became a rigid, shadowy place, where the air was thick with dread. We started to notice other signs. Our bread would go moldy overnight, our food would spoil, and at night we heard the sound of toasting, even when the toaster was off. Desperate, I reached out on social media, hoping for some obscure advice or help. My post was seen by none other than Elon Musk, who, for reasons known only to him, took an interest in our plight. A few days later, a package arrived at our dorm labeled Cyber Toast Solution. Inside was what can only be described as a cyber toaster. Sleek, made of shiny, almost otherworldly metal, with no visible buttons or slots, just a screen displaying "Toasting Protocol Initiated." Elon had even left a note. "This toaster transcends the mundane. It uses quantum computing to ensure perfection while negating any malevolent forces." We were skeptical, but desperate. Kyle plugged in the cyber toaster, and I inserted a slice of the most mundane, supermarket bread we had left. The screen flashed, analyzing the bread down to its molecular structure. Then, with a sound like a spaceship powering up, it toasted. The toast popped up, perfect in every way, golden, crisp, but the real miracle was the silence. There were no whispers, and it wasn't cold. The old toaster, now silent, seemed to shrink, its menacing aura gone. It was almost as if the cyber toaster had not only made the perfect toast, but had also sealed away the ancient spirit within it. Elon Musk, in his infinite, eccentric wisdom, had saved our day. From then on, our dorm room was just a room again, not a portal to some bread-haunted dimension. We kept the cyber toaster as our guardian, and we learned our lesson. Sometimes, the pursuit of laziness can lead to more work and terror than you ever imagined. But, with the right technology, even the darkest corners of kitchen gadgetry can be tamed.